Good morning. My name is Seiichi Matsuda, and I'm the Dean of Graduate and Postdoctoral Studies at Rice University. On behalf of the entire university, I welcome you to the 2022 Doctoral Convocation. It is my pleasure to introduce the distinguished guests on the stage. From the center, David Leebron, President of Rice University. Luai Nakle, Dean of the George R. Brown School of Engineering. Kathleen Canning, Dean of the School of Humanities. Thomas Killian, Dean of the Weiss School of Natural Sciences. Matthew Loden, Dean of the Shepherd School of Music. Rachel Kimbrough, Dean of the School of Social Sciences. Robert Bruce, Dean of the Suzanne M. Glasscock School of Continuing Studies. Fred Oswald, Professor of Psychology, Head Marshal, and Mace Bearer. And on this side, Fred Higgs, Vice Provost for Academic Affairs. Alex Bird, Vice Provost for Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion. Yusuf Shamu, Vice Provost for Research. Adria Baker, Associate Vice Provost for International Education. Matthew Taylor, Associate Provost. Alexandra Kiefer, Speaker of the Faculty Senate. And Joshua Moore, President of the Graduate Student Association. It is now my privilege to introduce you to the 7th President of Rice University, David Leebron.
Good morning. I'm going to do that again. Good morning. What? I love echoes. It is so thrilling to see you all here and to be able to gather again for a ceremony focused exclusively on our candidates for the doctoral degrees. I want to welcome all of you, and then I want to welcome your families, your parents, aunts, uncles, grandmothers, husbands, wives, partners, and as you may occasionally hear, your children. In many ways, your presence, that is our doctoral candidates, defines what it means to be a university. Without you, we are in fact not a university. You reflect both one of our most important missions. You have contributed while here to the production of new knowledge and creativity. In many cases, your work and contributions were essential to what our faculty also contribute. Without you, we could not have the impact on the world that we aspire to, not just now, but in the future. But you graduate, you receive your degrees with already having made contributions to the knowledge that will help our world, that will enable its progress, that will improve human lives and uplift human spirits, that help us understand our history and our past as we contemplate our future. So I want to thank you for all of that and congratulate you on your achievements. Now today, you will be hooded and we will celebrate your achievements, but you don't formally receive your degrees in a way until tomorrow morning. And we're going to do that in the football stadium. Now, I suspect that a lot of you have never been in the football stadium before. Many things have happened in that stadium. Some great victories, some terrible losses. But here at Rice, one of the most important events was, in fact, 60 years ago, when President Kennedy came to Rice Stadium to deliver his speech about going to the moon. In his most famous words, at least for Rice, President Kennedy asked, "But why, some say, the moon? Why choose this as our goal? And they may well ask, why climb the highest mountain? Why 35 years ago fly the Atlantic? Why does Rice play Texas? We choose to go to the moon, he said. We choose to go to the moon in this decade and do the other things, not because they are easy, but because they are hard. Because that goal will serve to organize and measure the best of our energies and skills, because that challenge is one that we are willing to accept, one we are unwilling to postpone, and one which we intend to win, and the others too. And so I like to think today, as our candidates gather here for their doctoral degrees, that you chose to come to Rice and pursue this highest level of academic achievement, not because it would be easy, but because it would be hard, because, in the words of President Kennedy, it would measure and develop the best of your energies and skills. Looking out on all of you today, I think it's important to add that President Kennedy did not speak of the race to the moon as something solely for Americans. He said, and I quote, "We set sail on this new sea because there is new knowledge to be gained and new rights to be won, and they must be won and used for the progress of all people." So we welcome today with enthusiasm our graduating doctoral students from all over the world, from North America and South America, from Asia and Europe, from Africa and Australia and the Pacific Islands nations. If this pandemic has taught us nothing else, it is that our challenges are indeed global and our solutions must be equally global. Within your time here at Rice, you have survived and overcome extraordinary challenge that few ahead of you have faced. And those challenges will no doubt prepare you for the unforeseen obstacles ahead. We hope your path will be inspired by the optimism of President Kennedy and what you and we can achieve. He noted that if we were to achieve, in that case, our literally high ambitions, we must be bold. So today, I want to congratulate you, the doctoral candidates of the class of 2022, and others who may have returned for this ceremony, for doing what is hard. I hope you will continue to do so, that you will be bold and compassionate and find new pathways to greater opportunities for yourselves and for others. Congratulations to the Ph.D. recipients of 2022.
Thank you, President Lebrun. We will now begin awarding doctoral regalia to the scholars assembled here. From the Department of Bioengineering, Gregory Berglund, to be hooded by Tomas Tkaczyk. Sean Bittner, to be hooded by Antonios Mikos. Ryan Butcher, to be hooded by Jeffrey Tabor. Siavash Parkade, to be hooded by Omid Vaisa. Molly Smoke, to be hooded by Antonios Mikos. Keru Zhang, to be hooded by Omid Vaisa. From the Department of Chemical and Biomolecular Engineering, Manav Bhatti, to be hooded by Thomas Senfel. Shayan Enayat, to be hooded by Francisco Vargas. Amit Jain, to be hooded by Michael Wong. Chunyen Liu, to be hooded by Thomas Senftel. Hao Mei, to be hooded by Lisa Biswal. Tanya Roberts, to be hooded by Michael Wong. Jin Song, to be hooded by George Hirasaki. And Lisa Biswal. Cha Ping Tseng, to be hooded by Joff Silberg. Eric Vavra, to be hooded by Lisa Biswal. And George Hirasaki. Zuqing Zhang, to be hooded by Lisa Biswal. From the Department of Civil and Environmental Engineering, Blake Atkinson, to be hooded by Dan Cohen. Sutanu Bhomik, to be hooded by Satish Nagarajaya and Ashok Viragavan. Debashish Jana, to be hooded by Matthew Brake. And Satish Nagarjaya. Hessam Talebian, to be hooded by Leonardo Augusto Dueñas Osorio. From the Department of Computational and Applied Mathematics, Sheng Chao Lin, to be hooded by Matthias Heinkenschloss. Rami Masri, to be hooded by Beatrice Riviera. Bo Shen, to be hooded by Beatrice Riviera. Yabin Zhang, to be hooded by Beatrice Riviera. From the Department of Computer Science, Suguman Bansal, to be hooded by Moshe Vardi. Jeffrey Dudek, to be hooded by Moshe Vardi. Lucas Martinelli Tabahara, to be hooded by Moshe Vardi. Afsane Rabar, to be hooded by Eugene Ng. Aditya Aniruddha Shroti, to be hooded by Moshe Vardi. Surav Sikdar, to be hooded by Christopher Germain. Philip Taffet, to be hooded by John Mellor Crumney. Karen Zhou, to be hooded by John Mellor Crumney. From the Department of Electrical and Computer Engineering, Madie Abbasi, to be hooded by Douglas Nadelson. Kevin Boos, to be hooded by Dan Wallach. Romain Cosentino, to be hooded by Ben Amazang. Bo Chiang Fan, to be hooded by Ben Amazang. Sayed Ali Hosseini Jebeli, to be hooded by Stefan Link. Xu Qiao Jia, to be hooded by Ben Amazang. Natsumi Komatsu, to be hooded by Junichiro Kono. Qingyue Liu, to be hooded by Peter Varman. Caitlin McCowan, to be hooded by Cindy Farage Carson. Tarun Kumar Reddy Medini, to be hooded by Anshumali Srivastava. Ali Asghar Mojipur, to be hooded by Junichiro Kono. Peshal Nayak, to be hooded by Edward Knightley. Ankit Raghuram, to be hooded by Ashok Veeraraghavan. Shi Su, to be hooded by Bena Majang. Xia Yi Ye, to be hooded by Edward Knightley. Sudha Yella Panchula, to be hooded by Ben Amazang. Joseph Young, to be hooded by Ben Amazang. From the Department of Material Science and Nanoengineering, Morgan Barnes, to be hooded by Pulikal Ajayan. Nitant Gupta, to be hooded by Ming Tang. Jin Cheng Lei, to be hooded by Pulikal Ajayan. Lucas Moreira Sasi, to be hooded by Pulikal Ajayan. Ved Ojha, to be hooded by Pulikal Ajayan. Sayed Mohammed Saljadi, to be hooded by Pulikal Ajayan. Devashish Salpikar, to be hooded by Pulikal Ajayan. Lu Ching Wang, to be hooded by Pulikal Ajayan. From the Department of Mechanical Engineering, D. Ao, to be hooded by Benjamin Fregley. Ata Babazadeh Nasseri, to be hooded by John Aiken and Fred Higgs. Nadish Narayana Balaji, to be hooded by Matthew Brake. Janelle Clark, to be hooded by Marcia O'Malley. Timothy Petrosius, to be hooded by Laura Schaefer. From the Department of Statistics, Sarah Bisidani, to be hooded by Marek Kimmel. Neil Desai, to be hooded by Catherine Enzer. Mao Mao Ding, to be hooded by Rudy Guerra. Carlin Fagnant, to be hooded by Catherine Enzer. Dongzhuo Huang, to be hooded by Philip Ernst. Michael Jackson, to be hooded by Catherine Enzer and Fred Higgs. Minjie Wang, to be hooded by Ginevra Allen. Tianyi Yao, to be hooded by Ginevra Allen. From the School of Humanities, Art History, Carolyn Van Wingerden, to be hooded by Leo Costello. Katya Zavistovsky, to be hooded by Graham Bader. From the Department of English, Andrew Battaglia, to be hooded by Timothy Morton. Emerson Zora Hamza, to be hooded by Carolyn Levander. Alexander McAdams, to be hooded by Joe Campana. Lindsay Sherrier, to be hooded by Joe Campana. Else Woodstra, to be hooded by Lon Lee. From the Department of History, Cynthia Martinez, to be hooded by Mormay Lopez Alonso. From the Department of Philosophy, Darren Medeiros, to be hooded by Charles Seward. Donald Oxtoby, to be hooded by Charles Seward. Timothy Grieve Carlson from the Department of Religion, to be hooded by Jeff Kreipel. Walib Rikab, to be hooded by David Bryan Cook. From the School of Social Sciences, Department of Economics, Maya Amani Hamedani, to be hooded by Shun Tang. Rajari Bowal, to be hooded by Jeremy Fox. Kirill Evdokimov, to be hooded by Julia Ersalan. Igor Hernandez, to be hooded by Peter Hartley. Robert Idle, to be hooded by Peter Hartley. Ajinkya Sanjeev Keshar, to be hooded by Rosella Calvi. Kelly Neal, to be hooded by Peter Hartley. Andrea Salvati, to be hooded by Flavio Cunha and Rosella Calvi. Shunji Zhang, to be hooded by Jeremy Fox. From the Department of Political Science, Yuki Atsusaka, to be hooded by Randy Stevenson. Jared Ostman, to be hooded by Ashley Leeds. Caitlin Sank, to be hooded by Diana O'Brien. From the Department of Psychological Sciences, Isabel Bilotta, to be hooded by Eden King. Ryan Brown, to be hooded by Christopher Fagundes. Shani Wong, to be hooded by Philip Kortum. From the Department of Sociology, Daniel Bolger, to be hooded by Elaine Howard Eklund. DD, to be hooded by Elaine Howard Eklund. Laura Freeman Sanegi, to be hooded by Rachel Tolbert Kimbrough. From the Shepherd School of Music, Ji-hyun Kim, to be hooded by Richard Lavenda. Matthew Lammers, to be hooded by Norman Fisher. Miu Lee, to be hooded by Arthur Gottschalk. The Weiss School of Natural Sciences from the Department of Biochemistry and Cell Biology, Philip Baker, to be hooded by Rosa Uribe. Barbara de Freitas Malgales, to be hooded by Matthew Bennett. Ramya Ganiga Prabhakar, to be hooded by Yusuf Shamu. Jihan Lin, to be hooded by Jane Tao. Roxana Yinas, to be hooded by Bonnie Bartel. Yue Zhou, to be hooded by Yusuf Shamu. From the Department of Chemistry, Yura Chen, to be hooded by Han Xiao. Shun Chen, to be hooded by Han Xiao. Tasneem Banu Frosnoon, to be hooded by myself. Sarah Hulgan, to be hooded by Jeffrey Hartgerink. Alicia Mangubat Medina, to be hooded by Zachary Ball. Lauren McCarthy, to be hooded by Stefan Link. Alyssa Pollard, to be hooded by Mark Pagel. Zhe Wang, to be hooded by Han Xiao. Lauren Warning, to be hooded by Stefan Link. Lin Yuan, to be hooded by Peter Nordlander. From the Department of Earth, Environmental, and Planetary Sciences, Boda Lee, to be hooded by Lawrence Young. Wenpei Miao, to be hooded by Fenglin Yu. Alana Semple, to be hooded by Adrian Lenardic. Neng Xiang, to be hooded by Fengling Yu. Yikai Chen, to be hooded by Melivoje Lucic. Nicholas Rouse, to be hooded by Anthony Virilli Alvarado. Sean Williams, to be hooded by Shelley Harvey. From Physics and Astronomy, Matthew Butcher, to be hooded by Andrei Nemedovsky. Yating Chang, to be hooded by Tom Killian. Laura Flagg, to be hooded by Chris Johns Kroll. Grant Gorman, to be hooded by Tom Killian. Matthew Kilpatrick, to be hooded by Carl Eklund. Joseph Wallen, to be hooded by Tom Killian. From the Jones Graduate School of Business, Tae-Hoon Im, to be hooded by Arun Gopalakrishnan. From interdisciplinary program, Applied Physics, Charlotte Flatterboat, to be hooded by Christy Landis. From Systems, Synthetic and Physical Biology, Ji-Won Lee, to be hooded by Caleb Basher. And Kareem Merabiani, to be hooded by Jose Onachik? Ryan Chang. Yeah. Please give a big round of applause to our 2022 doctoral scholars. So, dear scholars, each of you has completed a body of independent creative research, and you have all earned the doctoral degree. On behalf of the Rice University faculty, I welcome you as a peer into the community of doctoral scholars. We commend you for the talent, the commitment, the passion, and the resilience that you have shown. We deeply appreciate the contributions that each of you has made to strengthening and enriching the fabric of the Rice community. We're grateful to have had the opportunity to work with you, and we hope for the opportunity to do so again in the future, whether collaborating in research with us or perhaps through your future membership of another Rice Owl, or maybe come back and join us as faculty. I ask you to please remain while the platform party recesses from the hall, followed by the doctoral degree recipients. Thank you.
Thank you.